3 weeks after the fall of the Krek slave empire, representatives from 17 different species gathered aboard the human station New Harmony. The massive space station had been built in record time, a symbol of humanity's commitment to protecting the innocent across the galaxy. Captain Yuki walked through the station's main corridor, still amazed by what she saw. Humans had created separate environmental zones for each visiting species, adjusting gravity, atmosphere, and temperature to make everyone comfortable. Beings who breathed methane worked alongside those who needed high radiation levels, all kept safe by human engineering. "It's incredible," she said to her companion, Quartz Singer of the Keth. "They built this entire station just for a diplomatic meeting." The crystal being's body chimed softly, which was how the Keth showed agreement. "My people have been miners for thousands of years, but human construction methods are beyond anything we imagined. They work like they're trying to build something permanent." In the station's main conference room, Ambassador Jinwoo was preparing for the most important meeting in galactic history. The young diplomat had been chosen to represent humanity because of his skill with languages and his calm demeanor. He knew that the next few hours would determine the future of countless species. "Nervous?" asked Admiral Suho as he reviewed the final security arrangements. "Terrified," Jinwoo admitted. "These species barely trust each other, and they're all afraid of us. One wrong word could start a war." "Then don't say the wrong word," Suho replied with a slight smile. "Just tell them the truth. Humans protect those who can't protect themselves. Everything else will follow from that." The meeting began with formal introductions. Each species sent their most skilled diplomats, beings who had spent their lives navigating the complex politics of the galaxy. But they all seemed nervous in the presence of the humans, still not quite believing that the legendary Deathworlders were interested in peace. Captain Yuki spoke first, representing the Veltar. "3 weeks ago, my ship was dying and my crew was about to be enslaved. The humans crossed impossible distances to save us, asking for nothing in return. They could have ignored our plea, but they chose to help." Similar stories followed. Quartz Singer told of how human engineers had modified their rescue ships to carry crystal beings safely. Mistwalker of the Wisp described how humans had created special containment fields for gaseous species during the rescue operation. "The humans saved 10,000 of our people," said Elder Branch Tender of the Veltar. "But more than that, they gave us hope. For the first time in generations, the weak have champions." Ambassador Jinwoo listened to each story, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. These beings were placing their trust in humanity, and he knew that trust was fragile. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," he began when it was his turn to speak. "My people appreciate your faith in us. But I want to be clear about what we can and cannot offer." He activated a holographic display showing human space and the surrounding systems. "We don't want an empire. We don't want to rule other species or take their resources. What we want is simple: a galaxy where peaceful beings can live without fear." A representative of the spider-like arachnid collective clicked nervously. "The Krek's empire spanned 50 systems. You destroyed them in less than a month. How do we know you won't do the same to us?" It was the question everyone was thinking but afraid to ask. The humans had demonstrated power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. What was to stop them from becoming conquerors themselves? Jinwoo had expected this concern, because conquest goes against everything we believe in. On our homeworld, we learned that the strong must protect the weak, not exploit them. Any human who uses their power to harm innocents is not truly human at all. To prove his point, he shared recordings from the human fleet's actions. Every rescue operation, every careful evacuation, every moment where human soldiers had risked their lives to save alien civilians. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans fought to protect, not to conquer. The meeting continued for hours as the details of cooperation were worked out. The Veltar offered to share their advanced agricultural techniques, promising to help feed growing populations across the galaxy. The Keth provided detailed mineral surveys that would benefit everyone. Other species contributed their own knowledge and resources, but the most important contribution came from the humans themselves. Ambassador Jinwoo announced the creation of the Deathworld Compact, a mutual defense agreement that would protect any peaceful species from aggression. "If someone attacks you, they attack us all," he explained. "If slavers threaten your people, human ships will come. If pirates raid your trade routes, human forces will stop them. The age of the strong preying on the weak is over. Captain Yuki felt tears in her eyes as she listened. Her people had lived in fear for so long, always knowing that their peaceful nature made them targets. Now they had protectors who asked for nothing but friendship in return. The formal signing ceremony took place the next day, with representatives from 19 species putting their names to the compact. As each being signed the document, they were joining something unprecedented in galactic history, an alliance based on protection rather than profit. After the ceremony, Captain Yuki found herself in the station's observation lounge, sharing tea with Captain Minho. The human officer had become something of a legend after his rescue of the gentle current, but in person he was surprisingly humble. "I have to ask," Yuki said, "why did you really help us? Your people could have ignored our distress call. You didn't know us anything." Minho was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through the massive viewing port. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "My daughter is about your age," he said finally. "When I heard your distress call, I imagined her trapped on a dying ship calling for help. I realized that somewhere in the galaxy, you were someone's daughter too." How could I not help? It was such a simple answer, and yet it explained everything. Humans didn't help because they expected rewards or gratitude. They helped because they saw other beings as people, not aliens. They protected the weak because strength without compassion was meaningless. As word of the Deathworld Compact spread across the galaxy, applications for membership poured in. Species that had hidden in the shadows for centuries emerged, eager to join an alliance that promised protection without servitude. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to piracy reopened under human escort. The galaxy was changing, and the change was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Predator species that had ruled through fear found their victims protected by beings they couldn't defeat. Peaceful traders could travel safely for the first time in generations. On Earth, the homeworld of the Deathworlders, people watched the news with pride and determination. Their children were making the galaxy a safer place, carrying human values to the stars. The species that had been dismissed as legends was becoming the galaxy's guardians. Admiral Suho stood on the bridge of his flagship, reading reports from across human space. Refugee ships arriving safely at protected worlds. Former slaves reunited with their families. Trade agreements signed between species that had never trusted each other before. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another distress call. A species called the Harmony Singers is under attack by something called the Bone Fleet." Suho smiled grimly. "Signal the Third Fleet. Tell them to prepare for immediate deployment. And send a message to the attackers. Tell them they're about to meet the Deathworlder Protectorate." The age of human protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battle was unlike anything Captain Yuki had ever seen. She watched from her damaged ship as the human vessels moved through space in ways that should have been impossible. They twisted and spun at speeds that would turn any normal crew into paste. But somehow the Deathworlders inside remained alive and fighting. "How are they surviving those forces?" her science officer asked in wonder. "Our sensors show they're pulling 20 times normal gravity during those turns." Yuki had no answer. The humans were performing maneuvers that would kill her entire crew in seconds, and they were doing it while firing weapons with deadly accuracy. On the Soul's Fury, Lieutenant Hyun felt the crushing weight of acceleration as his ship spun around another Krex vessel. His vision tunneled and his bones ached, but his hands remained steady on the weapon controls. This was what humans were built for, surviving in conditions that would destroy weaker species. "Target acquired," he reported through gritted teeth. "Firing kinetic penetrator." The metal slug left his ship at incredible speed, crossing the distance to the Krex vessel in less than a second. It punched through the enemy's shields like they were made of paper, then continued through the hull, the crew compartments, and out the other side. The Krex ship split in half and exploded. "Direct hit," Hyun confirmed. "Target destroyed." Captain Minho watched the tactical display as his fleet tore through the Krex raiders. The enemy ships were larger and more heavily armored, but they moved like slow, clumsy beasts compared to human vessels. Every time the Krex tried to target a human ship, it was already somewhere else. "Status report," Minho ordered. 12 Krex vessels destroyed, reported Navigator Jeho. 8 more are trying to escape. 3 are dead in space. "Let the runners go," Minho decided. "They can spread the word about what happens to slavers in our space." But even as he said it, Minho knew the battle was just beginning. Intelligence Officer Nara was already working at her station, breaking into the Krek's communication systems and downloading their data. "Captain," she called out, "I'm reading the enemy transmissions. They're not just raiders. This is a hunting expedition from a major slave depot. According to their records, they have thousands of captives from dozens of species." Minho felt his anger grow cold and focused. The Kreks weren't just attacking random ships. They were running an entire slave operation. Somewhere out there, innocent beings were locked in cages waiting to be sold like animals. "Get me Admiral Suho," he ordered. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "I heard the transmission, Captain." "What are you thinking?" "We follow them home, sir." "End this once and for all," Suho nodded. "Agreed. But first, let's see to our new friends." Medical teams from the human ships were already heading to the gentle current. The Veltar crew watched nervously as shuttles approached their vessel. They had heard so many stories about Deathworlders that they expected monsters to emerge. Instead, they saw beings that looked almost normal. The humans were taller than Veltar and more muscular, but they moved carefully and spoke gently as they came aboard. Medical Officer Yunbi was the first through the airlock. She carried medical supplies and wore a peaceful expression that put the aliens at ease. "Don't worry," she said through her translator. "We're here to help. Are any of your people seriously injured?" Captain Yuki stepped forward, still amazed that these legendary Deathworlders were being so kind. "We have several crew members with oxygen deprivation, and our life support is failing. We'll have you fixed up in no time," Yunbi promised. She signaled to her team and they immediately went to work. Human engineers began repairing the Veltar ship systems while medics treated the injured. Yuki watched in fascination as the humans worked. They moved with incredible efficiency, their hands steady even in the low gravity. When a piece of machinery was too heavy for the Veltar to lift, the humans picked it up easily. "Are all your people this strong?" she asked Engineer Taehyun as he replaced a damaged power coupling. Taehyun shrugged. "This is normal for us. Our world has heavy gravity, so we adapt to it. What seems impossible to you is just everyday life for humans." While the repairs continued, Intelligence Officer Nara was making a disturbing discovery. The Krek's records contained detailed maps of slave routes, prison facilities, and auction sites. The operation was vast, stretching across multiple star systems. "Captain," she reported to Minho, "this is bigger than we thought. The Kreks have been doing this for decades. They've enslaved entire populations." Minho studied the data. One facility in particular caught his attention, a massive space station where the Kreks kept their most valuable captives. According to the records, it currently held over 10,000 slaves from 17 different species. "That's our target," he decided. "But we'll need more than just our fleet." Admiral Suho agreed. Within hours, more human ships were jumping into the system. The second and fourth fleets arrived with enough firepower to crack a planet. But Minho knew that brute force alone wouldn't save the slaves. They needed precision. "The station is heavily defended," reported Tactical Officer Do-hyun. "Multiple shield generators, automated weapons, and a large garrison. If we attack directly, they might kill the prisoners." "Then we don't attack directly," Minho said. "We make them come to us." The human plan was simple but brilliant. They would broadcast a message to every Krek's facility, offering the surviving raiders in exchange for all the slaves. When the Kreks refused, and they would refuse, the humans would demonstrate what happened to those who traded in sentient beings. Captain Yuki listened to the human discussions with growing amazement. These Deathworlders weren't just powerful, they were smart, organized, and completely committed to stopping the slave trade. They talked about rescuing thousands of strangers like it was their personal responsibility. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Captain Minho during a quiet moment. "These aren't your people. You don't even know most of these species." Minho was quiet for a moment, watching his crew prepare for the next phase of their mission. "On our world, we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. These Kreks are evil. We're good people, so we do something." It was that simple and that complicated. The humans saw suffering and moved to stop it, regardless of the cost to themselves. They were what legends were made of. As the human fleet prepared to depart for the Krek slave depot, Captain Yuki made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. She opened a channel to every Veltar ship and station in their space. "This is Captain Yuki of the Gentle Current." she broadcast. "I want to tell you about the day the Deathworlders saved us and why we should help them save others." Commander Vextar smiled as he watched the dying alien ship through his viewing screen. The gentle current was completely helpless now, drifting in space like a wounded animal. His Krex fleet had surrounded it, 20 warships against one broken trader. It was almost too easy. "Commander," his weapons officer reported, "the aliens have stopped transmitting. Their life support is nearly gone." "Good," Vextar said, showing his sharp teeth. "Send the boarding pods. I want them taken alive. Plant eaters like these will bring high prices in the slave markets." The Krex were a predator species, tall and lean with claws and fangs. They had hunted weaker races across the galaxy for thousands of years. The Veltar were perfect prey, peaceful, weak, and valuable. "Sir, we're detecting a strange energy reading," the sensor operator called out. "Something is coming out of hyperspace." Vexitar frowned. "Reinforcements? Impossible. The plant eaters don't have a military." Before anyone could answer, space tore open like a wound. A massive ship burst through the tear, its hull glowing red-hot from the violent transition. The vessel was unlike anything the Krex had ever seen. Angular, armored, and covered in weapon ports. "What is that thing?" Vextar demanded. More tiers appeared in space. Ship after ship emerged, each one bigger and more dangerous looking than the last. Within minutes, 13 alien warships surrounded the Krex fleet. The newcomers' hulls were still glowing from whatever impossible journey they had just completed. On the bridge of the Soul's Fury, Captain Minho felt the ship shudder as the overloaded engines finally shut down. They had made the journey in just under 4 hours, but the cost was severe. Half their systems were offline, and the hull temperature was still dangerously high. "Damage report," he ordered. "Engines are fried, sir," Engineer Taihyun reported. "We won't be jumping anywhere for a while. But weapons and shields are online." "Good enough," Minho said. He opened a channel to all frequencies. "This is Captain Minho of the Terran Defense Fleet. Unknown vessels, you are ordered to withdraw immediately from the vicinity of that civilian ship." The response came quickly. A harsh alien voice filled with arrogance spoke across the comm. "I am Commander Vextar of the Krex hunting fleet. You have no authority here, alien. Withdraw or be destroyed." Captain Minho looked at his tactical display. The Krex ships were larger than human vessels, but he had faced worse odds before. More importantly, they had innocent people to protect. "You have 10 seconds to begin withdrawal," Minho replied calmly. "After that, we will consider you hostile." Vextar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 10 seconds? You face the mighty Krex Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds and enslaved 1,000 species. What are you compared to our power? 8 seconds, Minho said. On the gentle current, Captain Yuki watched in amazement as the two fleets faced each other. The Deathworlders had actually come. Their ships looked alien and dangerous, but they were outnumbered nearly 2-to-1 by the Krex. "Captain," her science officer whispered, "those new ships are much smaller than the Krex vessels. The weapons readings don't match either. I think the Krex are more powerful." Yuki felt her hope fading again. The Deathworlders had risked everything to reach them, but it might not be enough. 5 seconds, Captain Minho announced. Vextar had heard enough. No one threatened the Krex and lived. "All ships open fire! Destroy these insects!" The Krex fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled space, all aimed at the human ships. It was enough firepower to level a city, but the human ships were no longer where the weapons were aimed. They had moved, not just fast, but impossibly fast. The Krex weapons hit empty space while the human vessels danced around them like deadly ghosts. "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "No species can maneuver like that." On the Soul's Fury, the crew worked calmly despite pulling forces that would crush most aliens. Lieutenant Hyen sat at the weapons console. His body pressed deep into his acceleration seat as the ship spun and twisted through space. "Target lock acquired," he reported, his voice steady despite the crushing gravity. "Firing kinetic rounds." The human weapons were simple but devastating. Solid metal slugs accelerated to 10% of light speed. When they hit the Krex ships, the results were spectacular. Armor that had protected the raiders for centuries simply vanished, along with large portions of the ships behind it. "Direct hit on Target 1, Hyen called out. Target destroyed. Across the battle, the same scene played out again and again. The Krex fired at where the human ships had been, while the humans fired at where the Krex ships were. It was not a fair fight. Vextar watched in horror as his fleet died around him. Half his ships were already gone, and the humans had barely been scratched. His remaining vessels were trying to retreat, but the human ships were faster. How are they doing this? He screamed at his crew. How are they surviving those accelerations? On the human ships, Medical Officer Unbi moved calmly through the corridors, treating crew members for the effects of extreme acceleration. Some had pulled 20 gravities during the maneuvers, enough to kill most species instantly, but humans were different. Stimulant injection for the gunner on Deck 3, she reported over her comm. He passed out during the last turn, but he'll be fine. Just another day in the fleet, she muttered to herself as she prepared another dose of acceleration drugs. The battle was over in less than an hour. Most of the Krex fleet was destroyed, and the survivors were fleeing as fast as their ships could carry them. Commander Vexistar's ship was among the wreckage, its commander dead, and his dreams of easy slaves ended forever. Captain Minho opened a channel to the gentle current. "This is Captain Minho. Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance?" Captain Yuki could barely speak. The Deathworlders had just destroyed an entire Krex fleet like it was nothing. The beings she had feared as monsters had saved her people. "We are alive because of you," she finally managed to say. "Thank you." "Don't thank us yet," Minho replied. "We're not finished. We need to make sure this never happens again." Captain Yuki stared at the damage report with growing horror. Her ship, the Gentle Current, was dying around her. The hull had 3 major breaches, life support was failing, and half her crew was already unconscious from lack of oxygen. The attack had come without warning, Krex raiders appearing from nowhere to destroy her peaceful trading vessel. "Captain, we have maybe 6 hours of air left," reported her science officer, his green skin pale with fear. "The Krex fleet is still out there. They're waiting for us to suffocate so they can take us alive." Yuki knew what that meant. The Krex were slavers, known across the galaxy for capturing weaker species and selling them in distant markets. Her people, the Veltar, were plant-eaters who had never fought a war. They were easy targets. She looked at her crew of 200 beings, all depending on her to save them. Most were young traders on their first journey beyond their home system. They trusted her to bring them home safely. Now she was about to fail them all. "Captain," whispered her communications officer, "there is one option. The Forbidden Sector is only 3 light years away." Everyone on the bridge went silent. The Forbidden Sector was where the Deathworld lay, a planet so dangerous that it had spawned creatures of legend. The beings from that world were called Deathworlders, monsters who could survive in the vacuum of space and kill with their bare hands. "The stories say they eat other intelligent species," the science officer said quietly. "They are worse than the Krex." But Yuki remembered other stories too. Old tales from traders who claimed the Deathworlders sometimes helped those in need. Most people called those stories lies, but Yuki was desperate. "Send a distress signal toward their space," she ordered. "Tell them we are civilians under attack by slavers. Ask for help." Her crew looked at her like she had lost her mind, but they obeyed. The message went out across space, a simple plea for help aimed at the most feared beings in the galaxy. Light years away, the human dreadnought Soul's Fury drifted through the darkness. The massive warship was on patrol, watching the borders of human space for threats. On the bridge, Communications Officer Hana was monitoring the usual radio chatter when something unusual came through. "Captain Minho," she called out. "I'm getting a distress signal. It's in a language I don't recognize, but the computer is translating it." Captain Minho was a tall man with sharp eyes and graying hair. He had served in the Terran Defense Fleet for 20 years and had seen many battles. He walked over to Hana's station and listened to the translated message. "Unknown beings of the Deathworld, we are the trading vessel Gentle Current of the peaceful Veltar people. We are under attack by Krex slavers. Our ship is dying and our crew is running out of air. If you receive this message, please help us. We have women and children aboard. Coordinates follow." Minho frowned and called up the star charts. "Navigator Jeho, how far are these coordinates from our position?" Jeho, a young officer with quick fingers, worked at his console. 3.2 light years, sir. At maximum speed, we could reach them in 72 hours. They say they have 6 hours of air left," Hana added. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew it was impossible to travel that distance in time. Even pushing their engines to the breaking point, they would arrive too late to save anyone. "Sir," said Engineer Taehyun over the comm system, "I heard the transmission. If we don't care about burning out our hyperspace engines, I can get us there in 4 hours. But the ship might not survive the stress. Captain Minho thought about the message. Civilians under attack by slavers, women and children dying while monsters closed in. He had joined the fleet to protect innocent people, and these aliens were asking for help. Signal the third fleet, he ordered. Emergency protocols. We're going in hot. Within minutes, responses came back from 12 other human warships. Admiral Suho's voice came over the comm from the flagship Righteous Thunder. Minho, are you sure about this? These aliens might be lying. It could be a trap. Sir, they called us Deathworlders. They're terrified of us, but still asked for help. That tells me they're desperate and honest. There was a pause. Then Admiral Suho spoke again. All ships, prepare for emergency jump. We're going to save some aliens. Back on the gentle current, Captain Yuki watched her crew prepare for the worst. The Krex fleet had moved closer, waiting like vultures for the ship to die. Their commander had sent a message demanding surrender, promising to be gentle with the slaves if they gave up peacefully. Yuki had not replied. Captain, her science officer said, oxygen levels are down to 3 hours, and I'm detecting movement from the Krex ships. I think they're getting impatient. Yuki nodded. She had not expected an answer to her desperate message. The Deathworlders were probably just stories anyway. Even if they were real, why would they help strangers? She was about to order her crew to prepare for boarding when Hana's voice crackled over the speakers of the Soul's Fury. Unknown vessel. Gentle current. This is the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. Hold your position and prepare for immediate assistance. Do not lose hope. Yuki stared at the communicator in shock. Someone had answered. The Deathworlders were real and they were coming. How long until they arrive? She asked. Her communications officer checked the readings. Based on their transmission delay, they're still 3 light-years away. Captain, even at impossible speeds, they can't reach us in time. Yuki felt her hope crumble. The Deathworlders wanted to help, but physics was against them. Her crew was going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. But she was wrong. At that very moment, space itself was bending around the human fleet as they pushed their engines far beyond safe limits. The hulls of their ships glowed with heat from the strain, and their crews endured crushing forces that would kill most other species. They were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The Krex slave depot hung in space like a metal tumor, massive and ugly against the stars. Station Commander Grixtel had built his fortress to be impregnable, with layer after layer of shields and weapons protecting the 10,000 slaves inside. He had never imagined that anyone would be foolish enough to attack it. Then the human fleet arrived. Sir, his sensor operator reported with barely controlled panic. We have 43 unknown vessels approaching. They're demanding the release of all prisoners. Grixtel laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. 43 ships against my fortress? They must be insane. Signal the defense fleet. Prepare all weapons. But as he watched the approaching vessels, Grixtel felt a cold fear growing in his chest. These ships moved wrong, too fast and too precisely. And there was something else. The energy readings were off the charts. On the bridge of the Soul's Fury, Captain Minho listened to the Krex response with growing disgust. The alien commander was not just refusing to release the slaves, he was mocking the humans for even asking. Tell the good Captain Grixtal, the Krex leader said over the comm, that his slaves will be sold at tomorrow's auction. If he wants to bid on them, he's welcome to attend. Minho closed the channel and turned to his crew. You heard him. He thinks this is funny. He opened a new channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Captain Minho. Our diplomatic efforts have failed. Commence Operation Broken Chains. The human attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of charging straight at the station, the fleet split into small groups that attacked from every direction at once. The Krex defenders found themselves fighting battles on 12 different fronts, never knowing where the next strike would come from. Pilot Do-hyun guided his fighter squadron through the station's outer defenses like a knife through soft tissue. The Krex automated weapons were fast, but not fast enough. Human reflexes, honed by evolution on a deadly world, let them dodge attacks that would have destroyed any other species. Target the shield generators, Do-hyun ordered his squadron. Make it clean and fast. The human fighters danced between defensive fire, their weapons picking apart the station's defenses with surgical precision. Within minutes, the outer shields were failing and Krex ships were exploding all around the depot. Inside the station, The slaves felt the impacts of human weapons and dared to hope. Many species were represented in the massive holding cells. Peaceful traders like the Veltar, crystal beings called the Keth, gaseous entities known as the Wisp, and dozens of others. They had all given up hope of rescue until the station began to shake. "What's happening?" asked Velmon, a young Veltar who had been captured months earlier. "Someone is attacking the station," replied Courtsinger, one of the Keth. "The question is whether they're here to rescue us or just steal us from the Kreks." They didn't have to wait long for an answer. The cell doors suddenly opened as human technical specialists bypassed the Krek security systems. A tall human woman in military uniform stepped into the holding area. "My name is Lieutenant Nara," she announced through her translator. "We're here to take you home. Follow my people to the escape pods. Stay calm and stay together." The slaves could hardly believe it. After months or years of captivity, someone had actually come to save them. They followed the human soldiers through corridors that shook with weapons fire, but the humans kept them safe. Back on the command deck, Admiral Suho watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Krek's defense fleet was breaking apart under the human assault. Their ships were too slow, their weapons too weak, and their tactics too predictable. "Status report," he ordered. "Outer defenses are down," reported Captain Minho. "Rescue teams have secured the prisoner areas. No casualties among the hostages." "Krek's casualties?" Suho asked. "Severe. They've lost 70% of their fleet. The remainder are requesting terms." Suho thought about all the beings who had suffered and died in Krek's slave pens. "No terms. They can surrender unconditionally or be destroyed." Engineer Taihyun was working deep inside the Krek station, carefully downloading every piece of information he could find. The Kreks had kept detailed records of their slave operations, names, species, homeworlds, auction prices. It was a map of suffering that stretched across the galaxy. "Captain," he reported to Minho, "I've found their complete database. This operation has been running for over 50 years. They've enslaved millions of beings." Minho felt his anger burn cold and focused. "Copy everything. We're going to track down every slave they've ever sold and return them to their families." The battle for the station lasted less than 6 hours. When it was over, the Krek's defense fleet was either destroyed or fleeing, and 10,000 former slaves were aboard human ships, receiving medical care and preparing for their journey home. But the humans weren't finished. Intelligence Officer Nara had found something in the Krek's records that made her blood boil. The location of the Krek's high command, the beings who ran the entire slave empire. "Admiral," she reported to Suho, "I've located the Krek's leadership. They're on a heavily defended world called HFY about 20 light-years from here." "What's our fleet status?" Suho asked. "All ships operational. The Krek's weapons barely scratched our hulls." Suho nodded grimly. "Set course for HFY. It's time to send a message to the entire galaxy." As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, the rescued slaves gathered in the observation decks to watch their saviors work. They saw beings who were clearly warriors, but who handled former prisoners with infinite gentleness. They watched humans risk their lives to save complete strangers, asking for nothing in return. Captain Yuki, who had remained with the human fleet as an observer, found herself standing next to a young human soldier. "Are all humans like this?" she asked. "So willing to fight for others?" The soldier, barely old enough to serve, thought about the question seriously. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days on Earth," he said. "She said humans learned early that if you don't stand up for others, eventually there's no one left to stand up for you." "But these aren't your people," Yuki pointed out. "You've never even met most of these species before." The young human shrugged. "Doesn't matter. They needed help and we were able to give it. That's enough." As the human fleet jumped toward HFY, word of their actions spread across the galaxy. The Deathworlders were real, and they were coming for anyone who preyed on the innocent. For the first time in generations, the weak and peaceful species of the galaxy had protectors. The age of the slave empires was ending, and the age of human protection was about to begin.